So it gives me the most qualitative and quantitative, I never know which, pleasure ever to introduce my guest today, the very smiley, happy person that is Katy Moses, who is the founder and MD of Kam Media. Hello.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Yeah. One too many Negronis last night, as we chatted about, but I'm okay. I'm surviving.
I think you've forgiven that. As I said to you earlier, we are living through a global pandemic. You're allowed to have one too many Negronis once in a while.
Couple of minutes of escapism. So today, what we're going to do, I'll be doing this pub and restaurant rebirth series and hooking up with all the Avengers and mates and all the rest of it across the industry to look at each vertical. So whether it's brand or local marketing or tone of voice or whatever it is. And today what we're hoping to do was go through WTF about research and just give people hints, tips, reasons why research is important, so that it's a bit of a 101 that they can take back to their workplace, or they can just have it as some self-development and learning, when they're locked down. So, yeah, over to you.
Oh, thanks. Right, now I've got to work out if I can work out how to do this.
I can share the screen.
Is it
Hey.
as seamless as I think? Yes, look at that. That's amazing.
That's a lovely cover.
Sorry. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. Listen, if you don't know who Kam are, for anyone that's out there watching it, we are a research and insight agency. We work primarily in hospitality and also work across grocery retail, so we get quite a good view of pretty much all the different areas that consumers are interacting with, either before lockdown, at the moment, or after lockdown. So what I really want to start by saying is that understanding the customer journey is the most important thing for your business. If you don't know what the customer is doing and why they're doing it, then you're setting the business up to fail in the first place, because without that knowledge, you don't even know what products you need to design, how your service needs to look. You need to understand, and I've got this, split this out into 3 areas. We call it props, people, and processes. So props is sort of your physical or digital artifacts. So whether that's what you're selling, or whether that's the service that you're giving. Your people are the people that are delivering that on your behalf, and obviously, as a business owner, you count as one of those people. And then processes. So that's your workflows, your procedures. How are you ultimately delivering that proposition? Are your staff up to doing it? Is your training good enough? And they're the 3 areas that we talk about when we talk about customer journey. Consumer insight and data, we call it the vital engine that kind of sits behind everything else you can do. And you can see there that we've kind of demonstrated it as cogs. But essentially, insights and data then feeds into your marketing, your frontline staff and what they do, your product development. And, this doesn't need to just be looked at from a hospitality point of view. This is pretty much everything. And then from that cog comes your footfall, comes the sales of your products, comes the loyalty of your customers. But essentially, you kind of need data and insight to feed into all of that in order to get those results. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking in my head there, what's the online version of footfall? I was thinking finger something. I don't know.
You're about to expose our lack of knowledge, Mark. Well done.
Up with some monkey and trademark it later.
It's user experience in some way or another, isn't it? Yeah, it's clicks.
Finger clicks.
And I love this. I love this quote. The world is full of data. I think people get really hung up on the word data and insights, and they worry about it, and they think, it's got to be streams and streams of numbers and data and Excel spreadsheets and everything else. But it doesn't have to be. Insight could be one conversation with one person. It's about harnessing it, and it's about piecing it together that's important. It doesn't have to be a big, thick deck of Excel data spreadsheets. In fact, I avoid those like the plague, can't bear them. Here I've kind of highlighted what most businesses would see as the 5 core elements to data and insight collection. So you've got sales data. So that's what have you sold? How many burger and chips have you sold? Or how many new hairdryers have you sold? One to me this week. Then you've got customer insight. You know, what does your customer think of you? What do they think you're doing well? What do they think you could be doing better? You've got staff feedback. And, you know, we work with a lot of companies who we have to kind of nudge into talking to their own, you know, employees and their own teams. Because essentially they're the ones that are giving the service or selling the products. And if you're not out there speaking to them about what they think about the processes you put in place or the products you're selling, then you're missing a massive chance there. Competitive benchmarking, really big fan of that. I think, you know, we've got the licensee index, which we've got all the major pub companies and all the family brewers in, and that's all about licensees rating their parent pub company on their areas of support. And I think it's really important to know what other people are doing, because you may be sat there with a 7 out of 10 for something thinking, yeah, that's all right, and everyone else is on 9, you know? So research is great, but you've got to be looking outside of just your own direct environment.
There's a couple of really interesting points there for sure. Going back, why do you think it is that people find it so hard to talk to their staff?
I think, good question. I think in my experience, so, and I've got a couple of examples later on actually of some projects that we've done just to sort of take you through that. But I think in my experience, people are scared as to what they will hear.
Yeah.
I think that when you're talking to staff, you have to use an external source to do it, an external agency or whatever to do it, you know, or not necessarily saying you have to use us, but, you know, because the point is that they're not going to tell you the full truth if they're sat in front of you. So, you know, nobody does. It's just human nature. So I think people are scared to ask their employees and their teams what they think. I also think they don't often know what to do with the results once they get them.
True.
I think that they're looking and go, right, well, they think that this part of our offering isn't any good, and then they don't know then how to take that on to the next step. So it's better just not to ask. And I think that that's the kind of fear that we see quite a lot.
I think some cases as well I've came across, there's maybe even a little bit of a lack of respect as well. You know, it's like you're there to do a job, and you know, I've been doing this for 100 years and blah blah blah. And a competitor benchmarking is really interesting because whereas back at lastminute.com, we were just slaves to this, right? And what we did was we used something called Hitwise, which I don't even know if it's going anymore, but basically it told you about your web traffic. And we were always sort of jostling for position to be number 1 with Expedia. Usually Expedia were beating us. But what it helped you make smart decisions. So what you found was Expedia was spending 7 times more than we were to hold that position. So when you look at that, you go, well, there or thereabouts. Do we, you know, so it can give you massive strategic maneuvers once you understand the data, because a stupider person might have thought we need to match them, or ego might have said we need to match them. Yeah. But if you take one step back and you know, make a decision cleverer than I'll ever be, but you sit there and you go, well, actually, well, there or thereabouts, let's save, you know, times 7.
Yeah.
So it's not just, you know, I think when I'm talking about competitor benchmarking to a lot of operators and stuff, it's, you know, what does it say in the A-board? You know, it's not necessarily that. You know, that's a big old circle, that one, which is great, really good.
Yeah,
really
definitely. And then the final point that feeds into that, this sort of, you know, the 5 areas, is supplier feedback, and this gets forgotten all the time. And in fact, it's rare that we get a phone call saying, can you please speak to our suppliers? But we recently did a project with a food supplier, with a food company who had a lot of different food FMCG suppliers coming into them. And they actually asked us to go out and speak to 40 of their suppliers and say, what do we like to deal with? And how can we actually improve our relationship so that we get a better service from you? You know, and it was fascinating to do, because luckily they're a really progressive company. They were really interested in what we presented to them. But I think that's the last cog, if you like, that people utilize, is actually finding out what do other people out there think of them. Really
good. That's a big one that's forgotten.
Massively. So why do you need data and insight? This is a bit of a list, and Mark, I'll make this presentation available to you if anyone wants a copy of it. They're very, very welcome to have it. But data and insight can tell you what people are buying, why they're buying it, what they wanted to buy but couldn't. You know, sales data is great, but it doesn't tell you what people would have liked to have done or would have liked to have bought or eaten or drunk. You know, it's how do customers make their buying decisions? Because there's thoughts behind why customers do what they do. Why buying decisions are made? You know, are they made before they enter your venue? Are they made in their venue? Why? How can you affect what they're buying before they've even walked through the door? How can you attract customers that don't visit your venue? How can you win back customers that used to? The role of staff, how are staff feeling? What support do they need? You know, how does your business benchmarking against competition? Your areas of strengths, your weaknesses. You know, there's so many things that insight and data can tell you. And if you don't have a really good insight and data strategy, then you're going to be missing out on the answers to pretty much all of these questions.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And then what I really want to make a point of is please don't just rely on one source of data. If I had £1 for every time someone said to me, yeah, we're going to interrogate our sales data. And then I say, okay, great, what else are you going to do? And they go, oh, well, no, we're going to do that. You know, sales data, you can see then, hopefully this chart will be helpful to anyone out there. This gives you an idea of what kind of insight will give you the answers to what kind of questions. And you can see sales data really only does the first step. After that, you've got to speak to customers, you've got to speak to staff, you've got to do the competitor benchmarking. You know, there are different ways to answer a lot of these questions, but you do really need a full mix if you want the full picture.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Now, quite often people do things in-house, and that's amazing. If you're Diageo or Wetherspoons, I'm sure you've got superstar insight and data people, and I know because I've worked with a lot of them, and there's some great teams out there. But and actually, this kind of leads in a little bit, Mark, to what you were saying just now about why don't people ask their staff questions when they should be. But, you know, there are some pitfalls that I would associate with running your own research studies. And of course, you absolutely can still do these, but there are certain areas where I do think you really need to use external resources. So first of all, you have that situation of unconscious bias. So whether you mean to or not, there is a potential to ask leading questions, soften or even mask negative results, you know, and accentuate the positives. And we've seen people do that. We've seen people pick out particular bits and go, yeah, we're doing really well. Well, actually, you're not. What the data actually says is. So actually, you know, having someone that's external and independent is really important sometimes.
Just on that, there's a famous sort of incident, I suppose, or anecdote. There's a guy, Sir Harvey, I can never remember his second name, but he ran ICI for years back in the day. And it was Robert Bean was telling me about it, and he was just saying the importance of someone external. And again, it's not as flogging our services, but they asked him at the end of his career at ICI, what made you so successful? And he says, I never joined. So having that ability to detect, because, you know, you start a new job with the best intentions and the best will in the world. You've got 3 months before you get dragged into being part of the team. And then actually, underneath it all, unless you want to be career limiting to yourself, you know, you're going to mask things, you're going to massage things, you're going to potentially please your boss rather than, you know, do the right thing. So that I think that's really important, and it's a consultant's job to tell you that you smell. You know,
Great, you're absolutely right.
Not blame it on the carpet, you know, or the dog.
Totally right. You're totally right, and that kind of leads on a little bit to the non-disclosure from respondents. You know, talking about speaking to staff. I mean, this is absolutely critical to use somebody external for this, because if they know, you know, if I know that I'm going to be giving feedback to my management team about my management team, I'm never going to tell them the whole truth. Never, because I might be dropping myself in it, or I just don't, you know, exactly what you just said. You don't want it to be career limiting. You know, the likelihood is they will not be 100% honest with you. So, especially when doing any kind of employee engagement, and I would massively suggest using an external resource. And then the final part there is that you can only focus on what you know and what you've already done. There's a real danger of just doing the same thing and, oh, I've got these 5 questions I want to ask. But if you're not using somebody external, you might not know the other 3 questions you should be asking, because they're going to come at it from a totally different point of view. They'll challenge the status quo. You know, again, the amount of times that I've turned around to somebody who's given us a brief and said, I don't think that's really what you want to ask. I think actually this is where you need to be.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. But and a lot of the time it is, you know, doing it for the sake of it, and it's a beige brief, and it's not getting to the heart of something that could actually change your business forever, which is a big deal.
No, it's the equivalent. You know those machines that as you go through, do you remember the good old days when we used to go through airports? Do you remember those machines as you go through check-in and what have
Yes,
you?
they're referenced an awful lot.
That is literally, that's it. That's what you're getting, unless you're getting someone to really look into your business.
Yeah. But do you know what though? There's a lot of clients that quite like that idea. They're like, why can't we just have a questionnaire that is the 3 buttons? No, they do. They do. But yeah, it's just I guess it's make it easy for me, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. I think if you use something like that in conjunction with other methodologies and other external agencies and stuff like that, then you're fine. But it'll give you an overview. Yeah. And then, really importantly, is finding the perfect research package to the requirements that you have. So you know what you want to ask, and then the question comes down to whether it's quant or qual, essentially. And people can really over complicate this, and I'm not actually a researcher by trade, but don't tell anyone. But, you know, only for the last 12 years, which is probably long enough. But essentially, quant is about measuring what. So it'll provide you with robust data. You get larger samples. It's normally closed-ish questions or list answers. Tends to be online, face-to-face, or telephone interviews. It's basically a methodology that provides scale. And then you've got qualitative. This is more about describing why. So this gives you a much richer source of information, smaller targeted samples, normally open explorative questions, focus groups, in-depth interviews, observations, shopper and customer intercepts, all of that kind of thing. And we tend to say to people, in any piece of research, try and get a little bit of both, because you're going to get a much more rounded view if you use both of these different methodologies.
Just there's a couple of bits on that. It was just like what I was taught at uni back in the day. So do you remember if you were ever wiring a plug? Do you ever remember wiring a plug? No.
Sure,
so you get the wires, and so the way you remembered it was blue was bottom left and brown was bottom right. So BL bottom blue, bottom ER bottom right. So you know, it kept you from getting electrocuted. So this was always what I get taught was quantitative is quantity, roughly, and then qualitative was quality.
Very good.
And then the other one was who was it that said? I think it was quantify it, then qualify it.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really.
What was been so interesting, right, is I've just done the first of 2 mini MBAs with Mark Ritson at Marketing Week. He, in one of the modules, went the other way. And he said, do qual first, then quant, and then potentially back to qual. So it was just like, so there's no cut you know, it depends what the...
There really isn't. As I said, yeah, people do get really het up on methodology and what we do when, and actually both methodologies will allow you to delve into the topic that you want to.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we have people, we do a focus group in order to inform a questionnaire for an online project. Sometimes you do the online project and then you delve into that insight with a focus group. You know, there's no hard and fast rules on that area, I don't think.
Yeah. But no, I just thought that was always a good way to remember it if you're ever stuck.
I remember it though. I like that one. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to steal that one from you. So, and you know, another tip for when you're doing research, nail the brief, please, because the best projects, and this, Blake is our research and insights and strategy director here at Kam. So generally a brief comes in and then he sits down and sort of pulls it apart and looks at a proposal as to how we're going to approach it. And he says that if the brief is good, the project will be great. But if the brief doesn't match up, you must have a clear objective or hypothesis. So what do you need the answer to? What is the end game? Don't say, I want to know what my customers think of me. because that's not an end game. That's just a sort of pie in the sky, airy fairy phrase. What you actually want to know is, I want to know whether my customers think I'm good at X. I want to know whether my customers think I should introduce Y. You know, so have your clear objective and hypothesis. Don't spend too much time in the brief thinking about the questions you want to ask, because any good agency will achieve that for you. You know, that they will come to you. They're better at writing questions than you. That's what, you know, that's what we do. We write questionnaires, we write discussion guides. So allow whoever you're using to do what they're really good at, but you guide them as to how you want to use it at the end game. Same goes for methodology. Again, you don't need to come to us and go, right, I'd like to do 100 telephone interviews. Whoa, okay, let's go back. What do you actually want to achieve? Who are the type of people we're going to be speaking to? You know, when we do research with publicans, for example, we tend to suggest a telephone methodology, because we just get a much better rate of response from that than we would online. Quite often, I know they're setting up or setting down pubs, remember pubs? And, you know, they're on the phone at the same time. So, you know, let your agency, the methodology will fall out of your objectives and what you want to achieve from it. And then finally, massively important, how are you going to use that data? Because we need to understand segmentation, data cuts. So for example, if we're going to do a project, let's say we're going to talk to 5,000 restaurant owners, but you're going to be marketing a tech product to them, for example, how do you need to cut that data? Do you need to know it by region? Do you need to know it by size of restaurant? Do you need to know it by style of restaurant? Make sure that you've got all of those ideas and you take all of those to your consultant or to your agency or to your team before you actually even decide on methodology and everything else, so that you know exactly what you need to know.
I think that's one of the biggest issues, and you know, looking at what they're going to do with after it. You know, I'm thinking about, you know, the poor marketing teams that, you know, just don't have the support. They might not even have the training or the discipline, you know, to be able to look at that. And, you know, I was interviewing someone lately for a role for one of my clients, and it was just a breath of fresh air, them talking about segmentation, data cuts, CRM, what they were going to do with stuff. And it was just like, whoa, I've not heard this chat nearly ever in hospitality. And, you know, it was a real, like, wow. So I think the smarter organizations and the smarter departments, smarter people are, you know, should be getting on this now and starting to think about it now, you know. But I think a lot of the time, the briefs that will be coming back to me anyway, and not that I would be able to do anything with them, but are just, how can we sell more stuff?
Yeah.
You know? So that might be part of a project. The other thing I'm finding is not a lot of people are measuring what people think of them, but in a strategic way of, are they driving the brand values?
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of brand tracking type thing just doesn't really seem to exist very much either.
No.
Just great.
No, yeah, absolutely. And you know, we know that the younger consumer, especially, so Gen Z up to sort of millennials, the brand values are just so important. And coming through this particular crisis that we're in at the moment, we're coming out the other side, they're going to be even more important. And we've already done some research that shows us that. So if you're not tracking what your customers and what your team think as to whether you're living your brand values or not, then you're really missing another trick there.
And also, are your brand values even relevant now?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And then finally, research, don't see research as the end. And I have, you know, we've got some amazing clients, and we have had a couple over the years who, here you go, there's the insight. Thanks very much, Katie. Well, can we help you? No, that's it, we're done now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I get those. Yeah, I get, well, you do the brand project, you know, and you think, oh, great, we've done it. And, you know, it's all, was it Robert Bean says, you know, like dry ice and simply the best place, and everyone's over the moon. And then they stick it in a drawer, and you're like, oh, mate, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the insight for us is the beginning. You know, we tend to try not to be a data giver. We tend to sort of say at the beginning, okay, you know, this proposal includes 4 days of our time to workshop it through with your team, or for us to help you to put it into action. So you should look at the so what's that are coming out of the research. You should also that research is a living, breathing thing. It's not, dive back into it later on, because it will probably give you some more answers as well. You need to track data over time as well. I'm a big fan of doing pulse studies. If you don't have to have massive budgets, because you can do a big project and then just do a pulse study every couple of months and then do another big project, but just to make sure that, things do change, and right now they're going to change even quicker. So we need to really make sure that we are that we've got ongoing research and insight and data happening out there. And also, just because we are in lockdown at the moment, and obviously the majority of hospitality places are closed or sort of reverted to delivery, etc. It doesn't mean that people don't have an opinion about you anymore. They still have an opinion. You still need to know what that opinion is.
Yeah, and it'll have changed massively. I saw a chart the other day from it was mapping Brewdog and Witherspoons in terms of sentiment, and you can imagine what's happened. So they're kind of jostling for position, and all of a sudden, so you Brewdog starting going up the way, Witherspoons is through the floor. In terms of brand sentiment. I mean, I sort of feel like they're bulletproof enough that they'll probably shake this off.
I hope they're doing, Mark, is I hope that they are out there speaking to those customers and saying, what do we have to do to get back in your good books?
Yeah, I'm not sure they are. But yeah, I wonder if it's a little bit Ryanair in the sense that they'll do what they want. They'll take some collateral damage. I think the club's bigger than a person in some ways. So I think because you've got such a sort of publicly known figurehead, that a lot of the flack might be attributed to him, maybe rather than the full brand. So people might come out and try and support this. So it's a bit of a weird one. But I'd be surprised if they were closing many soon. I think they'll be just fine, probably, which is a shame. But I think brands with less credit in the bank, to use a bad metaphor, is I think they'll be. They would have went under, they would have went to the wall or been harboured a bit more. But but it was interesting to see that. But you're right. I mean, I was on the phone to Robin Rowland the other night, and he was saying, and we're both agreeing, if you're not doing everything to engage with your team and engage with your customers now, then what are you doing? And the thing, and I don't have the answer for it, but the thing I'm quite keen to look at is above doing a virtual pub quiz and above putting your recipes online, like what else? I'm waiting for this amazing idea that I go, oh wow, they've done this, and I'm not seeing a lot of it. But then at the same time, a lot of businesses have furloughed their marketing staff.
Absolutely. So there's no one out there to do it.
Yeah, who's going to do it? So yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, I think, again, this is almost like, well, in fact, it's potentially more important than SEO in the sense that people buy the website and then they don't do the maintenance of, ongoing. Same with research. If you're buying a new mattress in the time since you did your last research, then that's a bad place to be in, isn't it? If it's every 8 years and I don't think enough people are leading their business from this, and they're seeing it as stuff and a distraction or overwhelming or I don't understand it or I know better. And having done the first of these two sort of MBA things, Ritson's talking about being like number one, the first thing before you do anything, before you get out the starting blocks, is being customer oriented, market oriented. So taking that telescope and flipping it the other way and starting from there, does the world and do customers really need what you're offering?
Yeah.
Or is it just another me too?
Yeah.
So it's fundamental, and I hold my hands up. I don't think I've taken research seriously enough over the years, because I think I was sort of brought up at lastminute.com, and Brent, rightly or wrongly, I mean, they did all right at the time. He was against it, and he was a bit like, well, if you don't know, you shouldn't be working here a bit, or customers don't know. But I think there's a balance. I think you have to lead from the front. You have to, not just be a slave to research to make it run your business.
Oh yeah.
But boy, can it help.
Yeah, absolutely. And gut feel is important, but you have to qualify that gut feel. You have to, a sample of one, as I always say, is a sample of nothing. And also, are you actually the target audience for your product?
Right. So this comes up all the time, which is my wife said, my 14-year-old kids don't give a shit what they said, and it's like, and also it was, again, the Ritson stuff. He's like, marketers, remember, you know nothing. You
Absolutely.
absolutely are dangerous.
Yeah,
With opinions.
you know nothing, because essentially you do.
Yeah. So I think it takes a selfless, balanced, self-aware being to know that you know nothing. But when you know the real data and the real truth, then it's about what you're going to do with it. So cool. Are we going to talk about the Rona?
The Rona. I cannot believe that millennials are calling it Rona. It's
the Rona. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, the main, I've only got a couple of points left, but the main point I want to make here is that it's important now to understand the people in your business. What are your team up to? What are your staff up to? How can you be supporting them? What do they think of the brand? Because we've got a unique opportunity in hospitality at the moment to make some tweaks. Because we are literally in this lockdown situation where there isn't a huge amount happening, we do have an opportunity to make some changes. So now might be the right time to be asking the question about what changes need to be made.
I'm an absolute slave for questionnaires at the moment, right? Yesterday alone, I did 3, and I spent nearly an hour doing them, and it was brilliant. So there was one from Mark Fox at Road Chef, which is saying how you feeling and this and that. About consumer stuff. You had to be you, not the Batman you, just normal you. And then there was Anya from she's like a coffee consultant,
right?
Marco. And then we had there was a government one popped up after hers. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they said. But it was great. Killed some time. I took it seriously. I probably filled it in with more attention than I usually do.
Absolutely.
And you're capturing people when potentially that they're at their most thoughtful or lowest. So you're going to get an interesting read.
Yeah.
But they'll have time to reflect. And I think more than ever, you'll have, some real strong, well thought through responses.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we've written a white paper called The New Normal, the Post-Corona Consumer. I presented it on Hospo Live a couple of weeks ago. And again, I'll give you a copy of it, Mark, and if you want to share it with anyone, please do. But one of the points that we're making in that is that you need to be speaking to customers now, because speaking to them in 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be, isn't going to give you the preparation and the insight that you need. We need to understand how are we going to relaunch, not once we have relaunched.
It's coming. I'm starting to work on it now, which is this sort of relaunch playbook, if you like. So I've already had my first couple of inquiries about it. So I think the smarter operators are dusting themselves down and saying, look, it's coming before Christmas, so let's get on with it. But I think to have some insight to help inform what that comeback looks like is a good thing. And also, I got a couple of bits of flack from putting up. I had put up something I was saying you should be phoning customers now, or just asking them how they are. And the example I was given was at Honda. Even if you'd owned a Honda for years, they had your record that you owned a Honda, and every day the senior management team, the board and all the middle managers, whatever, they all called at least 2 customers, and if you didn't do it, you were dead, right? So, and they did it. How's it? And people were like, I bought my Honda 7 years ago, whatever it was, and they're like, that's okay, you bought a Honda. And I think a brand calling up to see that you get, and also what I haven't seen enough of is like the thank you economy stuff, which is, just sending people stuff just because.
Yeah.
So for example, and I'm not using this as an example at all because I think they're doing great things, but if you look at the Honest Burger thing they're doing right now, which I would die for, but they are doing home kits which you need to go onto the website to, get one of 50 that's available every day.
Right.
So apparently, website crashed, and expectedly, and all that. I wonder if you could flip that, and you find out who your biggest fans are.
Yeah.
And you do, rather than just letting people come to you and, fastest finger first and all the rest of it. And, Mr. Gallagher and all that stuff, right? So if you have one of these gigs or whatever, is it the people that are fastest on the computer that get it, or is it his biggest fans that are in the room?
Yeah.
So, or eventually his biggest fans will be in the room, but they'll be paid double, right? Like me. So from that perspective, I wonder if there's a way that actually do some work to figure out who are your biggest fans. So whether you take a measure noisiest online, react to newsletters the most, bookings if there has been bookings, or the staff just know, or whatever it is, and those 50 people get it. They might be doing that as well. I've got no idea, but it just occurred to me, it's a lovely thing them putting it up online. But I wonder if it, there's you could have squeezed more out of it.
Yeah, it could be possibly a bit more personalised, couldn't it?
Yeah. So, but thank you, Economy's a good book to read on that stuff, for sure.
So, understanding the customer journey, this is achieved by understanding every single one of these points. So you've got the pre-journey side of things. So what's going on trend-wise? What's the behavioural data telling you? Have you done some customer profiling? Do you actually know who might be walking into your venue? And who is available to walk into your venue is just as important. Then once they're in there, how are they behaving once they're in there? What are your staff thinking about the customer and how they're behaving? What is the sales data telling you? There is still a really, really important place for sales data, I think, but I think it needs to be padded out by other areas. And then future proofing, and that's what we were talking about competitive benchmarking, supplier feedback, staff feedback again comes into that. You can see how important that is. Again, trend watching, again, behavioural data. So you've got to look at what happens before they come into venue, what happens in venue, and then what's happening next. And you need to cover all three of those areas.
No, it's good. And I think not enough people have profiled their customers properly. So on the trend stuff, is there any people that you look to or you would advise that people sort of sign up to or anything like that?
Not that I should be recommending other research agencies,
but just even if it's government things or there's
I think you need to be signed up to people like Kantar do some really good trend watching stuff. I think there's quite a lot of good futurologists out there actually. But one little bit of advice or a caution I should say that I would give is be careful of the people who tell you that they know what's going to happen in 30 years time.
Yeah.
Because especially in this current situation we're in, like it's a daily changing situation. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you and I are doing all this recording and having all these conversations with people. I've had to bin 2 or 3 of them because I've taken 2 days to get them out, and then what the person has said is out of date. So I think specifically in this particular area, I would be looking at people that are giving you advice as to what will happen in, maybe up to 6 months. The people that are going into 2050, etc. It's not going to be relevant to your business because a lot of it is pie in the sky thinking. These cars may well fly, but what use is that going to be to Weatherspoons? So I think look at the people that are looking a little bit closer to home at the moment.
Cool. No, I think that's good advice. Good advice.
And Jeff Bezos, who we mentioned earlier in our chat about Amazon, we were talking about Amazon. In 1999, he was asked whether Amazon was focused on being an internet player or looking to take on bricks and mortar. Internet, schminternet. There's one thing that we're about, and that's an obsessive attention to the customer experience. And that is what we need to have at the moment. Well, at any time, but specifically right now, the customers are not coming through our doors. How can we still give them a really good customer experience? What do they want to see from us? I think we need to be asking ourselves that.
I saw a thing last night on LinkedIn, and what they've done is, I think it was maybe through Zoom, like my background, but what they're doing is they're giving you a background of McDonald's, or it's all American ones, so it's like, is it Auntie Anne's, the pretzel place, whatever you call it, Wendy's, that kind of idea. So yeah, they've got the background, and then they've got the Spotify playlist, and then you order the food, and you're trying to kind of make it as if you're in there, sort of thing.
See,
But
that's great though. I mean, that's,
yeah,
you know, that's really innovative.
it's something. But I remember years ago, I worked with a web agency, and it was before my time that I was there, and they come up with the EasyJet stuff. It was a guy called Lawrence called EasyJet thing, web's favourite airline, and they were in the famous meeting just when I saw internet with Stelios, where he said, the internet will do nothing for my business. And he walked out the room. And then I think they carved off some budget and built the middleware to, you know, talk between the call centre and the thing. And, you know, but yeah, but I think with Bezos' point there, you know, they just happen to be on the internet. It doesn't really matter, you know, how they're doing it. And it's still amazing. And do you know what I thought was really cute the other day? They were actually under promising and over delivering. So what they were doing was you ordered something.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, you order in batches, but they were saying it was going to be May, but it turned up like in 2 days.
I've had exactly the same experience a couple of times. Yeah.
But your head was like, May? Jeez.
Yeah. Who else is doing that as well as Naked Wines, who I'm having quite a lot of contact with at the moment. But yeah, they're doing the same.
Nicked. When I've got Naked Wines, I've stopped doing it. Like I always, I don't know, we lived in Milton Keynes. Someone must have had it in their head when Naked Wines turned up. I must have got about 5 boxes stolen. So yeah.
So the point I want to make here, and I'm nearly done, don't you worry, is that it is important to have data. I've got there on your team as it is your customers. And by team, I mean not just so, you know, if we're talking grocery retail, for example, it's important if you are SPAR to have data on customers, but what about also the people that have got the SPAR franchises? We need to speak to them. And then what about the managers that are working in the stores? We need to speak to them. You know, a venue in itself will only succeed if they've got engaged, motivated, productive staff who feel like they're being listened to. And I feel like I've repeated this a few times in this presentation, but I think it's just an area we miss out on quite a lot.
Definitely.
And I tell you what, I've got a really good example of a brand who didn't interview the people that would be selling their products before they created it. So do you remember when was it Ariel or Persil? I think it's Persil, where they had the washing powder and they had the ball in the middle. Do you remember that?
The Ariel?
About 10 years ago. Yeah. And basically they found out they weren't selling any of it through independent retailers. So eventually they got in touch with the independent retailers and said, guys, why are you not buying this box? And why are you not selling, you know, why is it not getting any sell through? And the independent retailer said, well, because it's a big box. So we don't sell a lot of them anyway, because we run convenience stores. So we prefer smaller boxes. But if we do have big boxes, they only get sold maybe 1 a week. And that ball in the middle is an absolute ball ache to clean.
Oh.
Dust would settle on it, and they're only selling a couple a week. So they just stopped buying it because they didn't want to have dusty stuff on their shelves.
Yeah, just not thinking about it. Yeah.
So that is how important it is to speak to the people that are actually providing the product to the customers, whether that's in grocery retail or hospitality. Going by gut feel won't work anymore. You know, we've already covered this. Really, it's you might think that you know your customers, you won't know them after this. You know, you can't afford to make too many mistakes before. I do think that now's the time to trial things because customers are a little bit more forgiving. And if you make a cock up on your delivery because you've never done it before, they're going to accept that. But make sure that you get those things sorted quickly and soften your risk element by doing as much customer and staff research as you possibly can at the moment. I've got 2 case studies or 3 case studies I'll just take you through very, very briefly. We did something with Charles Wells. They basically identified a need to understand their tenants, their licensees better. They didn't really understand what their licensees thought of them or their BDMs, etc. So we suggested that we run some qualitative focus groups for them. So we already had all the facts as to what licensees were telling us because of the licensee benchmarking survey that we run, but we needed to understand what was sitting behind that. So we did a couple of focus groups. We really delved into the detail. We then gave a report back to Charles Wells, who have then put a lot of those sort of ideas into place. And it was about seeing character behind the data. And that's, you know, the conversation we were having earlier about qual versus quant. This is where qual works really, really well. We worked with WAA Chosen, their client is Pringles, and they wanted to understand the opportunity for Pringles within the on-trade. So, you know, would publicans and licensees take them? If they would, what kind of format did they need to be in? What, you know, marketing support did they need, etc. That needed to be quant, because they wanted to have some really robust data to go back and say X amount of publicans said yes, so it's worth us pushing into that space. So this is where we did quant telephone interviews, because as I said earlier, publicans, licensees, restaurant owners, cafe owners, we tend to get much better cut through on telephone. We then gave them some robust data as to whether they should try and sort of relaunch Pringles into the on-trade. And that's where you need quant.
Yeah.
And then just finally...
Did they do it?
Sorry?
Did they do it?
I think they did, yeah. I think they did. I think they put a bit of resource behind it. Yeah, I think that what we figured out, without giving away too much, I'm sure I'm allowed to say, is that there was a very strict segmentation of the style of pubs and cafes that that the product would work in. But that quant research, because they also told us the data cuts they wanted as well. So we looked at the style of venues, size of venue, etc. Because we had such a good brief for that, we were able to go back to them and say, yes, it will work, but it will work in these areas.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then just one final one. I can't actually mention the two brands involved, but safe to say one was a grocery retailer, one was a supplier. They really wanted to know whether a certain product would work within the store. So, but they also wanted a case to be able to show internally as well. So we actually put some video evidence into this as well. So we did quant shopper interviews, we did intercepts, qualitative intercepts, some in-depth interviews with staff and managers, and we also filmed people sort of at fixture. We put all of that together so that the client could then make a decision as to whether this product was going to be a success in this particular area.
What's intercepts?
So say that again?
What's intercepts?
An intercept is where you intercept somebody whilst they're actually doing...
Intercept. Sorry.
Yeah.
Intercept. Right, got you.
No, intercepts.
Them.
And then that's it, really. I mean, Mark, that's what I've got for you. That is my research 101 and informed to insights. Excuse the language there. I think this Blake put this presentation together with me, and this was my final sentence to him last night as he was putting it together, and he's decided to put it on a slide. Yeah. But you know, the sentiment really is there. The insight and data that you've got at the moment, it means nothing at the moment. So you need to be conducting research that's going to help you to inform how we reopen, when we reopen.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for doing that. That's just been so helpful, and you know, hopefully it gets across, you know, why do research, what you need to do to get started, and obviously who you're going to call and all that stuff. So yeah, thanks so much, and I hope the rest of your day goes okay, and you look forward to your wee glass of wine when you're cooking later.
Maybe. We'll see.
Okay.
Lovely. Thanks for having me. Cheers, Matt.